good evening. Welcome. We've got 14 people. That's great on the call. So thanks for all coming. You're all in listen only mode until we finish the presentation. Welcome to the BCS Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group. We have Wolfgang Goebl, who's coming in from Vienna today to talk to us about elephants and things. And you can see a big, I don't think it's an elephant, no, it's like a mammoth, doesn't it? But anyway, it's big. So we're going to be talking, probably Wolfgang's going to do a presentation for about the next 30 to 40 minutes. And at the end of that, we'll have questions, and we may then break out into a social group at the end if there's enough demand. But for people who don't want to do that, we should be finished within the hour by 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock European time. So just a quick one on questions. You'll see on this GoToWebinar, there is a chat box at the bottom. If you want to put any questions you've got as we go along into chat, then we're going to collect them as we go so we don't interrupt Wolfgang. And at the end, the organizers, Gabby and Chris and myself, will select suitable questions and then ask Wolfgang to answer them. So I hope everything's clear. If it isn't, do put into the chat box if something isn't clear, and Chris should probably be able to sort it. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Wolfgang. He's probably much better at introducing himself and what he does and how he does it. But we're very pleased to have you, Wolfgang. So over to you.
Thanks for having me. Okay. Yeah, a short introduction. Maybe some people know me from LinkedIn and maybe ask, who is this guy who has been posting so much on LinkedIn over the last 2 years? I would say I've used to be an enterprise architect who got a bit tired of enterprise architecture. So I've started in the topic in 2006 in Austria's largest bank, and I've done maybe 15 enterprise architecture consulting projects in so many companies, in all the big companies in Austria and in Germany and in such things. And 2 years ago, I decided to have a break and write a book. So I was a bit disappointed by what you find in the literature. There are books on enterprise architecture. There is this TOGAF framework everybody talks about. There's this Archimate. So there is some foundations. But I always was a bit frustrated by maybe too little practical advice. And that's the reason why 2 years ago I wanted to write a book. But after 2 months or so, I came to the conclusion that I can't write what I want to write, because enterprise architecture, you know, the topic is so huge, and where exactly does it stop? And it's connected to strategic management and to Agile software development, and it's connected to organizational design. So at the end, it's everything. And of course, I'm too small to write a book with everything. And so what I did 2 years ago is I founded an association, and I put everything I wrote on a wiki. So I open sourced it, and I started as a single person, and I created a community around it. And after 2 years now, we are quite a big community. I will talk about this at the end of the presentation. And I'm working full time together with some colleagues on architectural thinking framework, which will be called a toolkit shortly. I will talk about this too. So what we want to do with this architectural thinking association is a bit like Linux and creating an open source community, a community that collects all the wisdom from experienced and seasoned enterprise architects. Because whenever I talk to those guys that have been doing the stuff for 30 years, maybe, you know, there's so much wisdom. Tom Graves, for example, I have many discussions with him, and these people are so clever. And when you talk to these people, it's excited that everybody has similar experiences and end up with similar practices, but these practices are not in the frameworks. It's not in TOGAF and so on. And the idea is to have, and Tom is also part of our community. The idea is to collect the wisdom of the seasoned people and come up with a toolkit. We will see what this is all about, and open source it, and want to be a truly open alternative to what's on the market today. Yeah, and that's what motivates me, and some guys are working full time on that, but I will talk about this shortly. Yeah, and maybe this elephant, and I like this picture because when 5 years ago, when you asked people, there was this companies, there was this big digital transformation hype, technology, and now we have artificial intelligence, and we have chatbots, and we have blockchain, and we have autonomous cars, and there's so much technology that we have a new age of digital transformation, and we need to be innovative and change the business models. You know, all the buzz 5 years ago. But if you look at all the big companies, for example, Deutsche Bank, or companies, British banks, and all the big ones, I haven't seen so many innovations. So my question is, if digital transformation is happening, is it really happening? Is it really that do we have really transformations? And if what and if not, why don't we have it? And so these are big questions, and I think that enterprise architecture has an inherent potential to change this, and it's a mission critical thing to architect enterprises, but maybe this picture is also a metaphor for the state of the art of enterprise architecture. Everybody knows that it's important, and you can discuss this. Of course it's important, but it's quite an unsuccessful field, and the impact enterprise architects have on real big enterprise decisions usually are very weak. I've seen it maybe in 5% of all the companies that enterprise architects have a substantial impact on big management decisions. So this elephant on the one hand stands for digital transformation for companies in general, but also for enterprise architecture, which should and must be a driver and maybe an innovator for digital transformation. And and so I have three topics on the agenda today. Maybe dive a bit deeper into the problem, and then the biggest part is I will give a short overview. So I can't display everything, but we have certain key concepts, and we can discuss also in the social event afterwards when I have a beer. And then I have a bit about who we are, what is this community, how are you willing, and if you're willing, how can you collaborate with us and participate in this vision, and what is it what we do, what is it what we want to produce, and why, and so on. I really like to show this picture in many and most of my presentations. So the question is, after 30 or 40 years of enterprise architecture, if you look at IT application landscapes of the big companies, nothing significantly has changed. Maybe it got worse, yes, but the complexity is usually in 95% of all companies I know is out of control, and always with this agile stuff, people add applications and interfaces, and in these days, in this VUCA world, and in this innovative and shorter time to market circles, sustainability and the sustainable enterprise architecture, a modular enterprise architecture, is not on the top prio of CEOs. So I think this problem is not visible, and I'm not sure if business people are aware of this. For me, this is really, it's a disaster, because companies invest so much money on just maintaining their legacy, and can't by nature, they cannot be innovative, because, and for me, this is also the reason why digital transformation is not really happening. So not many many big companies really have transformed. And it has to do with legacy and technical debt. And there are many papers discussing technical debt. What shall we do against this, and what's the problem? And if you go to the business side, usually what they do, they have the finger and they blame IT and say, okay, IT, CIO, you don't have your IT under control, and enterprise architects. And I think we know that everybody hates the IT guys because everything is complicated, expensive, slow. We can't get the innovations that we want to have. But if we really take one step back and ask ourselves, so why is this situation? Is this really the fault of the IT department? Is this really a fault of enterprise architecture? And I say no, because there were so many business decisions and wrong investments, and the business side, they have the money and they make the big decisions. And when they decide that we need a quick and dirty solution and we botch our IT landscape, if they decide it, they can botch it. We just take this order, and then some Scrum team implements another application, and nobody cares about the overall enterprise architecture. And from this finding, from this motivation, with architectural thinking, our vision is to open enterprise architecture and the concept of architecture itself and bring it to the business side. So it means it's not only about business architecture like people in the bespoke want to promote. It's about a mindset that there are elements and that there are relations, and then that you need to manage the dependencies between those elements, and that's a common business task to keep this complexity of business and IT structures within reasonable bounds. And maybe this is one of the major misconceptions that business people, I think they really believe that's a problem in the IT, but it's a problem in the business side, because wrong business decisions lead to non-sustainable IT architectures. Yeah, and so on. And another observation, when you look at companies, there are many architects. There's no single big enterprise architect. Yeah, you have process managers. They've been around for 30 years maybe, and there are software architects, senior software developers also, and so on. And of course, there are domain-driven designs, the microservice designs. They affect the elephant model, so the overall architecture of the enterprise. Yeah? And recently, over the last 5 years or so, there are huge communities coming from service design communities and user experience designers and all the young people that see this elephant from this outside in. Yeah, that they are 10 times more than the enterprise architects. So we must be aware that we are not the only one. So these 10 people you usually have in a big companies, these 10 enterprise architects, were never able to architect the whole enterprise. They don't have the political power, we know that. They are usually not well connected to all the other guys that work daily on this design and processes and software architects. So that's maybe one of the problems, that you have many architects, but today there's only little cooperation between them and unclear accountabilities. Yeah, if you read the books of service designers and of process managers and you look at their concepts, there are lots of similarities, but they don't read the book of other people. And what we want to achieve is that we want to bring architectural thinking with very, very basic concepts. We will go in this in more details to all of these people. So it's not about having a framework or a toolkit for enterprise architects. There are just 40,000 enterprise architects on LinkedIn. There are 400 million people on LinkedIn in total. Yeah? So there are 10 times as many service designers, 10 times as much process managers, and so on. So maybe that's a paradigm shift. We want to create a toolkit that is simple and easy to apply, and want to bring it to all of these disciplines, even to top-level executives, yeah, because they are heads of enterprise architecture. Chris Potts, also a Brit, hopefully you've read his books. He's a really cool books that he wrote. Says, okay, the CEO is head of enterprise architecture, at least he should be, but in reality he's not. So these guys are our customers where we want to go with architectural thinking. So, and what are the basic concepts? Yeah, we do have a meta model. I know enterprise architects love meta model discussions, and we can have them over a beer this evening. We have one. I will show it in a way that you can read it and say a few words about it, but it's not that important. Maybe it's important to have clear terms and so on. That's cool. But maybe more important is this, what we call enterprise core map. We want to have a picture of the elephant, a wireframe of the elephant that represents the enterprise, mostly the business relevant aspects, capability, processes, customer journeys, and so on, but also a bit of IT. And the idea is to create a map, enterprise core map, that is understood, accepted, and co-created by everybody in the enterprise. So we really want to bring this wireframe outside of this ivory tower of an enterprise architect. But maybe even more important than the elephant are connectors. So if you just have the elephant and nobody cares about it, and it's not in the room when big decisions are made, and it's not in the room when people implement their solutions in their Scrum teams, it's absolutely useless. Just to model for model's sake, it's absolutely useless. So we will come up with tools and dashboards for management that makes it easy for them to access the elephant, to work with it. and so on. We have a few roles, and you might be surprised that we don't have an enterprise architect, but just to make you curious, no enterprise architect, but we have some roles. And very important in our toolkit are what we call design patterns. So what we think is there's a huge lack of practical how to model stuff, how to model capabilities, how to set up a governance structure under certain contexts, and how to connect processes and information entities, how to model information entities and their relations, and how to relate that. The concepts are in the bespoke, for example, and in TOGAF, so we are not the people that invent that. But what we will do, and that's the power of the community, is to come up with really practical design patterns. So where beginner enterprise architects, beginner service designers maybe can have a look and learn from this big community we have, and it's getting bigger every day. Okay, so this is this blue circle, so architectural meta model. We all know that there are so many meta models around. Yeah, every architectural framework has its own. TOGAF comes with this TOGAF content meta model, and you have Archimate with 30 elements. And every tool provider, every enterprise architecture tool provider comes with its also a meta model that is usually flexible, but every company has a different one because they should tailor it. And what we did is that we say, okay, what's in Archimate, for example, and in TOGAF? Let's have a look, and minimize it to a minimum set that is necessary and understandable by all these various stakeholders. So the art here is to use concepts we believe that executives can understand, that user experience people can understand. For example, we have process. We don't have value stream. Currently in TOGAF and coming from bespoke side, they really focus on value streams. We decided, no, a value stream is just a certain kind of a process, but people understand the process concept. They have steps and activities in a process that's much easier to understand. That's the reason why we took processes. And we do have IT. For example, we have applications, IT applications, and they are based on technology. Of course, you have all this technological stack. You have also in Archimate down to the node and to the network and all this technology. But we really do not focus much on technology. So we have applications and we have maps and we have patterns how to manage application portfolios, IT application portfolios. But from our point of view, application is part of business architecture. It's not an IT asset. And processes, of course, are business architecture, capabilities, organization, products, and so on. And what we have, and that's maybe a bit uncommon for all these meta models I know, we have objects, and that's not information, that's a physical, these are physical objects. So you have a branch and you have a desk, and that's what a company is made of. This company has certain capabilities to create products. So we have this in our meta models. And the capability needs an organization, people, it needs applications, IT, and it needs usually physical objects like a plant or a machine or something like that. It doesn't mean that we have maps now how to model that stuff. We are not sure, but it's just incomplete. If you have it in a bespoke, you have an information object, but usually they don't deal with physical objects. We do. And on the left side, yeah, you have the product and you have the organization. That's not the biggest strength of enterprise architecture usually, because the org people are quite separate from enterprise architects. That's a sole discipline. The people can study at that, and they focus on organization only. And what we want to do also with this meta model and all of our tools is to have an offer for the organization people and say, okay, yeah, organization is really essential. Nobody doubts that, but it makes so much more sense if you connect it to capabilities, if you connect it to processes and to product. And so this meta model, and the reason why it is as it is here, is that we want to open it and say, hello world. So that's not for enterprise architects. We cannot go with TOGAF. We must quit all these meta modeling issues. And do we need services? And you know, on LinkedIn, you can discuss meta modeling issues for hours. We want to have a simple one, and that's what it is right now. Yeah, and I talked a bit about this enterprise core map. It's a connector between everything. So if you want to have a metaphor, it's a bit like Google Maps. Yeah, so you open your smartphone and you see the Earth. So that's the elephant. You see the wireframe of the enterprise, and there you have defined terminologies like this is the ear, and this is the eye, and this is the tooth, and we all know that's not trivial that the company agrees on the same terminology. That's not as easy as it seems. We all know that, but with this elephant model, we want that everybody collaborates to create this model, and we want to have this discussion. Is this the eye? Is this the ear? And do we need a stronger tooth and so on? And this only works if this is a simple model, and it's simple, and we like to, and it's business oriented. So this map, there's absolutely no IT in it. That's very much about capabilities and information and customer journeys and those stuff of the enterprise and products, of course. And we think that it's really mission critical to come up with a brilliant user experience. So the model, how people touch it and work with it, it must be a bit like an iPhone. So we are not always happy with what enterprise architecture creates. If you go have a look at Bespoke and TOGAF, I would say the example there, so the graphical layout of the examples, it is ugly, to be honest. And we will never, enterprise architecture and business architecture will never connect to service designers and to the business world with ugly artifacts, even if they are precise and if they are correct, but that's not enough. Yeah? It must be beautiful. And that's what we will come up. We want to come up with beautiful maps and used and accepted by everybody. I said it before, it's not another enterprise architecture framework for enterprise architects. It will be a toolkit for everybody, for every designing discipline, for all the people that work on this elephant each and every day, and it should be collaboratively connect those people, used and accepted by everybody. I like this metaphor a lot with the iPhone, yeah, because the enterprise, it's a complex thing. We know that legacy and IT and the processes and the law issues and compliance and I don't know. So I've worked in many companies. So the business, it's extremely complicated. Yeah? But what we want to have is it's like a touch screen on top of this complexity, so that every stakeholder can have this elephant on this touch screen, maybe can rotate it, maybe can zoom in into certain aspects. And if he finds a way where he disagrees, maybe he can have a tool later on, we don't have it yet, and say, okay, the ear is a bit too small, we must make it bigger, and that people collaborate and that they have their conflicts and negotiations based on an enterprise core map is usable as an iPhone. We believe that this will make a big difference to bring enterprise architecture out of this ivory tower and make it a discipline, not of a one role or maybe 10 people in a company, but for everybody. And we believe it's only possible if our maps are really beautiful and easy to use. Business capabilities, yeah, enterprise architects like business capabilities. I do too. So it's a hierarchical decomposition of the business. You know that. There are examples in the Bespoke and in TOGAF, and you can find some stuff on the web. We are, I would say, not always happy with all the examples. So we use business capabilities in a way, and if participants today of you have read the Bespoke, they will say, okay, no, that's wrong. This is a wrong capability model. And that's exactly what happened. So because we had Mike Rosen, his vice president of Business Architecture Guild, he was part of our group, and we weren't able to agree on a way to model that stuff. Yeah, it looks simple. You have a hierarchical decomposition, but what are the dimensions? How do you break it down? How do you decompose? For example, Bespoke doesn't allow to have sales and service as a capability, because everything must be related to an information object. So it can be contract management or customer management. This leads to capabilities that end with management. way too often. And we say, no, that's not good, because the way we see capabilities is that each and every box must be understood and accepted by the business people. We don't want to have the most precise semantics here. So a good capability model is good when executives and all the people we want to work on the event agree, yes, that's our model. And it's not so important to have this syntactical, semantical precision. And we use this not as strict as in the bespoke. So, but I will give a webinar next Wednesday. There is one where we can discuss this a bit to more details. And of course, this enterprise core map and capabilities and this big picture is not enough to define an enterprise. Of course not. And for that reason, in the current version of the framework, we also have more specific maps for this classical IT application landscape management. So that's not a sensation. That's, I think, enterprise architects do that in a quite similar way, that you have this portfolio and then you have a map, and then you can heat map, and then you can heat map according to cost and so on. So we also have this because we think IT application landscape planning is, of course, a strategic and an important task for enterprise architecture or for architectural thinking. That's true. And we have processes, but where we also only connect to good old process management. So this is a major discipline with processes, and we don't go with the value stream concepts. We can discuss over a beer. I have had many discussions on LinkedIn why we will never use the value concept, but I like these discussions. That the reason is people are usually, I think, people understand the concept of a process much better, and value is quite an abstract thing. So that's why we don't want to use it. And information. Yeah, everybody says information is the oil of digital transformation, and there is the data management association and big data. You know, we are talking about data, and artificial intelligence is based on data. Everybody knows how important it is, and of course we call it information because we want to have the business side. And we are maybe a bit conservative because we believe in these good old concepts of loose coupling and high cohesion, and this good old 90s business object modeling, where you try to come up with an information entity model, a business-oriented one, that defines this is the ear and this is related to this part of the elephant in a certain way. Everybody knows the concept. So if you've started like me 20 or 30 years ago, you've learned it. But these days, entity relationship modeling with all these microservices and Agile and so on, not many people understand why redundancy is not the best idea. So we believe redundancy, so it's really still the concept of modularization, reuse, loose coupling, which are the basic principles of information architecture. In that case, we believe in these ideas. So this is maybe also where we will say a strong opponent, where we oppose maybe with the ideas coming from the microservices communities and from the people that say we want to reduce dependencies and we don't have time, we want to botch and now implement a solution, time to market, yeah. But it leads to what we have seen. It leads to technical debt and more expensive IT landscape. So information is really important, yeah, but we don't have any sensational concepts. But what we will have, and that's the power of the community, we already have what we call a work stream. So that's a group of people that collect design patterns for good information object modeling. That there are no books. There are some books from the 90s, but in the last decades, nobody wrote a book on how to model a well-designed information entity model. For me, this is quite surprising because it's the oil, but we have this big data, we have data lakes and dump everything in the data lakes. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that. And it's really important how we deal with this situation. On the one hand, you have this legacy, you have this redundant information of weak quality, and you want to have good quality, of course, yeah, but this means that you need to have a better designed application landscape. It starts with processes. We know that information is related to applications and processes. Everything is related, but in these days, this thinking, it's not modern because we are digital transformation, we need information, we need chatbot and so on. That's not where we want to go. Yes, and then it's very much about making the connectors. Yeah, one thing is you must have a beautiful elephant, and this wireframe of this elephant model must help managers, executives, C-level maybe, or business heads of business units to make the big decisions. Yeah, we know that strategic governance. So every enterprise architect wants to be in the boardroom. Only a few get to the boardroom. That's my experience. And really getting to the boardroom means that all the big investment decisions are based on the elephant and based on an enterprise architecture model. I haven't seen that quite often, but we believe it's mandatory. If you don't have this connector, you will fail with your whole initiative. And the same is true with this tension between all the young people in the Scrum teams, in the Agile. Yeah, we know that, yeah? Young people, and they have these green toenails, as I see, yeah, and they want to be equal and they want to be autonomous. They want to make their decisions. They don't want to have the old guys in the boardroom make the decisions, even if they do still today in most companies I know. So there's a tension also between the strategic people and the solution developers, but at the end, with the elephant, what we want to have is a shared understanding of all the people, where say, okay, there's a big decision, maybe let's discuss, does this elephant need a third eye? Maybe then he can see better at night, and then maybe it's better for our business model if it has a third eye. And then you can hire somebody who designs it and say, okay, the eye would cost so and so many million pounds. And then you make a board decision. And in this process, a third eye, of course, it's a good idea to involve autonomous people and include the creativity and the wisdom and all this design thinking, and that's of course cool, but it does only work into a big picture if there is a big picture. If there is no big picture, of course, no people can't collaborate in this collaborative enterprise architecture approach. And so we will come up with tools, and we also have a work stream, a group of people led by Scott Emler. So he's part of our group. If you know him, he's the father of Disciplined Agile, one of the Scaled Agile frameworks. I'm really excited to have him with us. And when we launch the toolkit in version 1, we will also have an integration with Disciplined Agile, and we will have many people, software developers and domain-driven design people, where we will discuss what kind of maps, tools, workshop formats, how can we reach those people that they accept the elephant. Because we say it's not enough to have this enterprise architects model anything in whatever modeling notation. If those people are not on board and if they don't collaborate, it's useless. It's absolutely useless. And that's what I see in so many companies, and I see so many frustrated enterprise architects. And I used to be one until 2 years ago. Now I try to change it. Okay, and then we have roles. And what we say, everybody, so not everybody, but the people on the left in gray, or the service designer, product managers, and so on, they are enterprise architects, if you want, or they are enterprise designers. They design parts of the elements in collaboration. And on the right side, you have people making decisions, executives, and then you have this tension between the executives and the autonomous teams that's not resolved with all this buzz around business agility and so on. That the war is not over yet. There's still so much friction. I don't know if there is a best way yet, but we don't mind about this discussion. All we say is you need to make this connection. So they are designing people, and all designing people connect to a single enterprise core map. And the enterprise core map is the instrument you present at the boardroom and base your management decision on a connected wisdom of all these disciplines. That's what we want to have. And of course, this process needs somebody who facilitates, who runs workshops, who runs interviews, who goes to the executives, to the seasoned business experts, who goes to the autonomous teams, is part of this team. So maybe works on certain solutions to ensure that the solution architecture is aligned with the elephant and so on. So we changed the name from enterprise architect because he simply doesn't architect. He's just co-architect maybe, or much more important is a facilitator, facilitating between all the interests of these various people, because you have always conflicting interests. It's not just about, let's see and design. We all know that enterprise architecture is pure politics, corporate politics, and you need a way to balance and to make decisions and negotiate those interests that conflicting, and this changes the role completely because this old school, maybe that's not the best term, yeah, but if you studied and then coming from enterprise architecture and studied IT and are the best analytical person, that's not the most important skill. It's still important that you're an analytical thinker and that you know the tools and know how to model information and processes and capabilities and how to run all this enterprise architecture stuff. That's of course you need this tool, but maybe it's much more important to work on your social skills, on asking the right questions. Yeah, you must become more like a gardener. It's more about connecting to people, mediating between interests, playing with the politics, find allies, build coalition with management and those stuff. So it's much harder, in our opinion, to work with the social skills to facilitate. It's not that you are the architect who designs all that stuff. You're just a listener asking questions to all these people and try to paint this elephant, because you're just holding the pen. But of course, you need to know what to model and how to do it. Okay, yeah, so this is the overview of all the tools. And yeah, and the third point would be who we are and what we do. And maybe another 10 minutes or so for that. Over 2 years, oh, and there's a Brit, so this is Chris Potts here, part in this intersection conference. I attended this masterclass, a really clever guy if you read this recreation book. And so our community has grown over the last 2 years, and it's really cool. We have a board of directors, we have 2 presidents, so Milan Günther and I, we are presidents of the association, and we have a treasurer and so on. So we're making the decisions, we manage the money, and so we don't have that much yet, but we're still in a startup phase. And then we have 7 core team members. Scott Embler is maybe the most prominent one. We have had Daryl Core for some years. You might have known him, and some other guys from Canada, the international group. And we meet on a monthly basis where we discuss basic concepts and where shall we go and how shall we launch the association and shall we write the connector to disciplined Agile. We agreed to do so, for example, and then what are the basic concepts. So this is the group of people that tries that all the concepts fit together and are coherent. So it's not like TOGAF that you have a committee with hundreds of people that have an interest and then they vote for something. We want to make it really small. So we have 2 people at the end, we have 2 presidents who make the final decisions of the content. So if somebody says, we must have value streams, I will say no, and then we don't have value streams. That seems to be a bit autocratic, but we believe it's the only way to come up with a small toolkit, with one that is cohesive and is the basis. It's the work of many people. So we have 30 advising members. I'm really proud. So we have Martin Mocker. I'm proud of that. He wrote this design for digital, and we have Jeannie Ross. She retired, so she's just an honorary member. And we have people from designer communities and so on. And I think this is really our strength, is this community, and the people love the passion and the vision we have, because it's a community project and it's open source. Everything is transparent. We don't making big money, so it's a bit like Linux in the startup phase also. And what we are searching right now, and we already have 5 of them, are development partners that want to try certain concepts, certain design patterns we already have, pay some money because we need it for development next years, and come back with feedback. So really interested to keep connected to real world projects. That's why we have this development partner concept where companies can have the connections to this cool community and get some mentoring and so on. Yeah, and for us, interdisciplinarity is key. Diversity. Yeah, we know this from the Agile world. You need to have a diverse team. We have enterprise architects, but about 40% enterprise and business architects. So, that's a bit blurry distinction between those two. But we have as much experienced service and business designers. So we have one guy who was part of the group with Mr. Osterwalder, who co-created the business model canvas, for example. So we also have a connection there. If we want to have, we can have a call with Osterwalder, and I think so. I haven't had a contact. But what this means is the toolkit, what we want to produce, it's not enterprise architecture at all. That's not true. There's a core of enterprise architecture, capability, processes, TOGAF. We will take a lot of concepts that are already there and of course edit and make it simple as an iPhone. But we will also include concepts like customer journeys, service designer, user experience is very important. These people, they think in a completely different way. It's really, we have fascinating discussions in this group because they don't understand the basic concepts of metamodeling. They don't understand corporate politics and those things. So, and vice versa. I think we enterprise architects are not that good in understanding people and experience of these people. And yeah, so this is a diverse group of people. I'm really proud of that. So I don't want to bore you. So we have some, I can send you the slides. We have Bart Papegai. I'm really proud. He used to be head of chief analyst at Gartner, was quite frustrated and left Gartner and said, I will never do enterprise architecture again. And then I contacted him and said, oh no, it's not enterprise architecture. It's about architectural thinking. And now we're writing books together. So that's really cool. Yeah, and so it's growing, and I'm really proud about that. So I won't bore you with that, but it's not only this MIT guys, for example, this Design for Digital. This book is awesome. This book was so helpful. But the other people, Naomi Stanford, for example, she's an organizational designer. She writes really influential books on org design only, but she has this org design only. So if you read her book, for example, it's only about org, and you say, no, that's not enterprise. You need to connect it. And so she's also quite isolated, like all those people there. Yes, and we want to connect them to create something that connects maybe the designer world, so this and org design and all these disciplines in a way that is simple. Yes, and what is it what we are creating? A community, I mentioned it. So the community is, of course, that's our resource, and we're working mostly with volunteers, but we are also starting to pay people for writing, and our first publication, so this is a bit of an advertisement, will be published November 13. And we call this enterprise design patterns. It's not enterprise architecture, sorry, enterprise architecture. It will be called enterprise design. And inside, there are 35 instantly usable patterns. So these are also patterns coming from the wisdom of this community for doing enterprise architecture / design with an impact. Because what we found is that 90% of enterprise architects I know are frustrated because they don't have an impact. Everybody implements it somewhere. Nobody listens to the enterprise architects. And these patterns, we hope, are a contribution that this changes a bit. Yeah, and we will take another 1.5 years, and then we will come up with a version 1.0. And we think 1.0 will really be 1.0. So it should have a good quality. It will not be huge, but it will be beautiful. It will be designed. So we have the best brand designers. We have the best graphical designers. So it will be, I think it will be the opposite of TOGAF. It will be much less pages, but much more practical and much more beautiful, because we believe in the power of beauty. Beauty is what connects disciplines, and the toolkit must be beautiful. Yeah, and then I admire Steve Jobs a lot. So this one last thing from Apple. I mentioned this Metamodel, right? Yeah, so this is this architecture Metamodel we use. We have capabilities, processes, nothing will be new from you. It's very simple, and it focuses on the entities we think you should focus if you do it and want to bring it to everybody. And this architecture Metamodel only answers the question, how does everything fit together, work together? Which application do we use to run this process? Which products, which capabilities are needed to create a product, for example? So how does it work together? Yeah, but architecture doesn't answer important questions. And that's the reason why we believe, and that's a more recent development, we will launch it at our conference in November, is that we want to have 3 facets and see the elephant not only from what we are used in enterprise architecture, from these capabilities and how is it related, and this engineering point of view. Architecture is so much about engineering. It's so little about feeling. And the designers, customer experience designers, for example, they come much more from the feeling side. How do the customer feel? Let's create a persona. Let's do research. Yeah, in the designer community, have so many more research methodologies to understand the people. What's the role we play in our people's life? What value do we deliver? So this is this customer experience, this red bubble, this second facet. Yeah? And then we have the green circle here. That's about identity. Who are we? Why are we doing that? I mean, architecture just says, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Which IT application, which algorithm, which data, but why? What does it make sense? So this big question, this vision, mission, you know, that this identity thing is totally omitted in architecture, and there are people that deal with this already. And these are more coming people more from the brand design. So that's a totally separate discipline, brand design. You can study it. Organizational design, you can study it. That are experts in their field. But what we want to point out is that it's connected. We know that it's connected, but today it's not. You have enterprise architects and they deal with the blue. They do capability and processes that's common in enterprise architecture, and they have applications and technology. We know all these elements we deal with usually, but not that often with products. Also, the bespoke doesn't have products in the core. We think it's really important to have this and have the products in the overlap between what we produce. It's an architectural artifact. We believe that products are architectural artifacts, yes, but they're also, of course, experience artifacts. Yeah? Because how do they feel? How do it when I get a bank product or book a ticket at Austrian Railways? How does it feel to get the product? How does it feel to use the product? So that's much more about the soft factors, experience, user experience. We know that it's getting more and more and more important, and we must know that we have 10 times as much experienced designers than we have enterprise architects. So they outnumber us. So that we must be, if you look at this picture, we must be honest and say we are just a minority. But of course, we have important skills in this whole game, and that's what we want to do with this architectural thinking toolkit, is that we want to bring the wisdom of the enterprise architects and connect it with the wisdom of the user experience and of the identity, brand, and organizational design people. So it's about bridging these aspects. Yeah, and so these are just the final slides, just a bit of an advertisement, stay in contact. We launched weekly Wednesday webinars, so if you're interested to dive deeper into capability modeling, this is next Wednesday, and on September 23rd, I will be talking about this management, how to do the strategic management connection. This is the second connector. And Bart Papagai is really strong in the soft factors. So we have a chapter and also a webinar only how to behave as an enterprise architect. What is a behavior that helps you immediately? And I've seen so many architects fail because of a lack of soft factors. So we want to emphasize on this a bit. And with the merger with the enterprise design community, we also have a conference in the association. I'm really proud of that this conference has been running for 7 years now, so since 2014. I think it's the 7th time, and it will be hosted, will be run as a virtual event, so you can register there, and it's called Conference on Enterprise Design. So if you listen carefully, I think what we are about to do is to nudge the discipline of enterprise architect, make it simple. So this architectural thinking, a really simple core of architecture, and nudge it more into the design direction, because we believe enterprise architecture has a bit of a branding problem, because everybody perceives us as purely IT, and not many executives want to deal with us because we are the IT guys that don't have the IT under control. And it seems as if we will come up with a slow nudging into the direction we will want to call it enterprise design. Yeah, and that's the final advertisement. The book will be published at the conference and will be available in every sales channel you can imagine. And you can become a development partner. So yeah, that's it. Okay, that completes my talk for today. Thank you for listening. You haven't had a chance to talk yet.
Wolfgang, very good. That's good whiz round. So look, what I think we'll do is if there are questions for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll take them. But if you have got, put it then chat, and we'll finish at the top of the hour. So people who've allocated an hour can go, and then I'll issue a Zoom link, and we'll spend 5 minutes just getting a beer or a cup of tea or whatever you want, and then we'll move over to Zoom. So Wolfgang, can I kick off then with a question? It's interesting you've got such a close association with the enterprise design folk, Milan and everybody. Could you just give us a bit of background as to how that how that happened. You know, how did you come across them? How did they come across you? A long time. And where do you see this whole thing going, say, in 3 or 5 years' time?
Yeah, it happened. I 2 years ago, when I started my book project, I did a big research of books, and then I found Intersection, the book of Milan Günther, and I read it, and I contacted him because I wanted to start the association, and that the best way is read the books of those guys and then invite them to a chat. And he agreed to become a partner of this core team. So he's been a core team member for 2 years now. And I think over the last 1 year or so, we have been discussing so intensely on Slack all day long. Yeah, and I think what happens is that his enterprise design framework used to be a little too less structured. So when you look at it from an architect's point of view, there were relations missing. There were just ideas, but the ideas were so great. He had so many great ideas in this book, but it's hard to read because the structure is weak. So and I'm maybe the opposite. I'm really a structured guy. And in this discussion, he changed this enterprise design Metamodel, what I showed you. It's the result of 1 year of discussions with him. And he created this 4 months ago, and he presented it to us, and I was blown away. I say, okay, yeah, just open it and everybody understands what we are going to do. Yeah, and it's really a fruitful cooperation. We are two presidents. We're working really closely, and I think we complement each other in a way it's really amazing. He has some weaknesses. I have my weaknesses, but we complement it in a way that's perfect. And what I think, where this will go, I think we will be successful, of course. I must say that. And what I see, he's one of the best networker I ever met. And he knows so many people, and people already, they want to become advising members, and they bring in their work, like Naomi Stanford and custom experience designer. So we now have access to the best people in this design space because his network is so awesome. And I think I have quite a big network in the AA in this space. I know most of the guys, I think, and it's a networking thing. Yes, and I think it will come that we will hope to be the mainstream toolkit, and over time, hopefully, will also be part of management. So we want to make it a natural tool for strategic management. We will publish some tools and some articles that focus on executives, yeah, with the message. It's about enterprise design, because today, if you read Harvard Business Review, for example, if you read Harvard Business Review, you read design thinking and you read scaled agile, business agility. Every issue, but there's nothing about enterprise architecture, about enterprise design, about sustainable design and architecture, and we want to change that. So we believe that's what's missing. Of course, design thinking is important. So we want to be maybe this bubble that has ever been missing, but it must be a tool for people must understand it's not IT, it's their duty, and maybe design is a better brand than enterprise architecture.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was on a call with Tim Brown earlier, who's some would say the father of sort of design thinking from IDEO, and it was a part of London Design Week, which just started today, on the circular economy and how the whole world is shifting now, particularly in sort of goods and services, particularly goods, towards making things more circular, less pollution, better design for reuse, keeping things in reuse longer. And it was about 250 people, 300 people on the call at London Design Week. And there's another group that's got the design logo. You can probably put architecture and design together. Who are swimming their own, paddling their own canoe. They're all off under Tim Brown and IDEO, and funnily enough, SAP was sponsoring the event. And I suppose my question to you there is, we've spent the last 20 years or so, you're either an SAP shop or an Oracle shop in a lot of companies. And the SAP, having done it myself for a few years, not as an SAP expert, but having to manage the human side of getting SAP systems in. That Germanic sense of, this is the way, and, is sometimes a conflict to the more design mind thinking, which I think we have a lot of in the UK. So my question here is, you didn't have London on the final slide. You seem to have missed us out. Is that because we're Brexiting, or because you don't like the UK?
No,
or
we
you
don't
just
have
haven't
London in this
contacted?
community. I mean, there was Chris Potts. Okay, he's in France now.
Yeah.
But Tom Graves is also an advising member. The list is not complete.
Okay.
But if you attend this conference, that's where we will introduce the toolkit, because what I showed you today is architectural thinking part only. But from the design community, there are coming things like design sprints. Like research methodology. They have a lot of tools, and in these discussions we are having, we need to balance them and understand how to integrate it. And that's also happening in the book, which will be published in 2 months. We had already have had so many understanding where we understood each other's viewpoint. It's very much about breaking the gaps. It's very much about keeping an open mind and get rid of some stubborn mindsets. Every disciplines, there are stubborn people, and that's my discipline, and we want to have people in the association who are open and try to understand why are some aspects of design missing in architecture and vice versa, and so on. Yes, that's.
Yeah, no, it's very laudable what you're doing. You're taking on quite a task. So if you were to describe where you are in 5 years' time, I asked you that question. Let's finish on that as a question. Which organizations are you going to look like? What or are you going to be something unique? You've talked of Osvalder and Strategizer. You've talked of some of the other folk, TOGAF. What are you going to look like? What are you not going to look like in 5 years' time?
Maybe one of the biggest differences is we want to have a small core team. So we don't want to have design by committee like in TOGAF, because I think we think this is a root problem. And we don't want to run it as a company. So we will ever have this at the not-for-profit association according to Austrian law. And our authorities, they take it really seriously. So they check us every year, and we are not allowed to make profit on the long term. So now what we're doing, we add money. Hopefully we get revenue and sponsors. So we are searching for sponsors too to fund next year. But then this association is only a platform where people, seasoned experts who are interested to contribute, and maybe there are so many that want to contribute because there's so much wisdom and that it's their legacy. They want to have a place where they can ensure that their legacy is kept for the future, and they connect. So we have producers, maybe like a multi-sided platform. We have people that produce. Producing means we have work groups where people discuss it, and at the end we have a production team with maybe 3, 4, 5 people. We pay those people, so we want to have enough money to pay the production, but not the discussions. And this must be balanced. So it means that we are an association, and I'm not allowed to drive a Rolls Royce. So maybe that's different in America. So in Austria, not-for-profit means not-for-profit. And we believe that that's the only way that the community connects, and it is already connecting to us with all the wisdom, because we want to be transparent, and it must be clear that it's much more about passion and it's about content. It's not about money. And if we will come up with certifications, maybe later we will have this, and this can be a revenue stream. So this might be a bit similar to TOGAF, but our focus is content and not keeping a business model live. So that's if I look at TOGAF, to be honest, not much has changed in the content over the last decade or so. It's more a money machine than a content machine, to be honest. And Osterwalder is clever, but he asked 40,000 euro for a keynote or something. I don't like that, to be honest. So it's much more about creating the content. Let's grow the community. If we have money, let's spread it to create the wisdom, and we will be very transparent about this.
Great.
Because that's the value.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. We've got no questions from the audience. I think this technology is quite new to the BCS, but I hope we can stay in touch. I hope this BCS, we can get some of our coming to your intersection conference. We did run a conference that we had for the last 2 years, and some of the people you talked about have come along. But yeah, let's see if we can build some bridges. I think from BCS point of view, it's certainly more attractive than some of the other organizations you've mentioned who are pretty difficult to collaborate
Yes.
with. So hopefully, as the BCS, we're the sort of probably best known and best many members in the UK and worldwide actually for the IT industry here. So great. I've put a link in the chat. So if you want to look at that, it's a Zoom link. We will flip to that at 8:05 UK time, 9:05 European time. So if you just want to spend the next 30 seconds finding that and copying it into your browser, then I'll know that we'll be able to start that in 5 minutes. And in that 5-minute break, we'll shut this down and we'll open the other one up. As it's all on my computer, I'll probably not be able to do both at the same time. So thank you very much, Wolfgang, for coming. And
see you in 5 minutes. I got the link.
See you in 5 minutes.
5 minutes. See you.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.